Welcome to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. What's your train wreck? Everyone has one. The question is, are you going to live there or are you just visiting? Let's check in with Mary, Fran, and Kristen to learn how to come through not broken, but brilliant.
Hey everyone, before we dive into this week's episode, we have a resource that we wanted to tell you about.
Transform every week of yours with our Brilliance Bit that will deliver right to your email inbox. Sign up for it at brilliantlyresilient.net and keep living brilliantly resilient. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Brilliantly Resilient Live. I'm Kristen Smedley here with my partner Mary Fran Bontempo, and we have a new friend in the Zoom room today that I literally just before we started recording was doing the mind blown emoji, life emoji, because the similarities here with the paths that our guest the path that our guest has been on, as well as Mary Fran and I, are just it's too similar not to say, what else is at play here? Today, we're talking to Judy Chinitz, and she is involved in the world of autism, special education, trailblazing, life-changing, total change maker. And I was so excited to read your bio, Judy, and then to sit here and talk about, in 30 seconds, we chatted and just so many similarities. So first of all, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. This is fun and exciting.
This is just wild to hear that. So to catch the audience up, I guess I should have hit record when I just started chatting away, which tends to happen here. You know, we have a mutual friend and Fran Hauser and connected through LinkedIn and then all these different ways to come together. And I'm looking at Judy's bio. I said, oh my gosh, you're involved Judy's involved with autism because her son was diagnosed with autism. So I said, oh, had you ever been involved with autism or anything like it before your son was born? Because I had never been involved with blindness until the first blind person I met was my son. And then Judy says, well, I was a teacher of the visually impaired. I'm like, what? But I wanted the best part of it is that you started it by saying you started on Wall Street and left Wall Street. Judy, catch us up here. How did all this happen? Wall Street to special ed to teacher of the visually impaired, autism. Oh my gosh.
I was one of those people who in college, I never knew what I really wanted to do. So I majored in English literature just because I loved it. And then I graduated and I was completely afloat, did not know what I wanted to do, mostly because everything seems pretty interesting to me. So
same thing.
There's very little that I'm not interested in. So I started off, believe it or not, in graduate school for library science, but I couldn't even pay my rent. And a friend of the family got me a job on Wall Street. I knew nothing about it, nothing, but the pay was good. So there I was for 5 years down on Wall Street, a phone on each ear screaming, cussing up a storm, that kind of thing. And I was the biggest misfit you've ever met. First of all, I don't lie. So you can imagine how well that went over.
Wall Street?
I know. And I was 22 and I had basically an unlimited expense account. So that was really fun for a few years. New York City, the limos, the restaurants, the sporting events. I love watching sports. So it was all a whole lot of fun until I realized that I could not do this the rest of my life. I was like just done. Put a fork in me. I was done. So I decided I'd go back to graduate school and get a degree in special education. And originally, as we were just talking about, my original degree was teaching the blind visually impaired. Then I won't go through all the different things I had to do, but we moved to England when my child was 1, my older son was 1. I got into the brand new internet industry, taught myself to code, but he tanked when I was in England. And we came back to America, and that's when he was diagnosed at 2 years old with autism. And that completely now, after that, my life was set. There was nothing, it was taken out of my hands. The control was gone. And so I rolled with the punches. I recertified in special education, started doing part-time work when I could, working with children on the autism spectrum. And sort of did that for quite a while, ended up doing a bunch of other things, got divorced in now, 17, 18 years ago. So I raised my kids by myself. I have a younger son who's neurotypical. And then 4 years ago, my son now being 25 years old, I heard of this method where you could teach non-speaking children with autism how to supposedly speak through spelling on a letterboard. Just imagine a laminated piece of paper, basically, with the alphabet on it. Now, I was quite convinced. The school had been telling me all along that my son was profoundly cognitively impaired. I had no reason to argue with them. I tried to teach him, right? I'm a special ed teacher. So for 25 years, I tried to teach him even just the alphabet. There were lots of things I couldn't understand, couldn't reconcile. He would do things that seemed awfully smart for somebody with a 40 IQ, which is what I was told it was. And all the testing showed that he was cognitively impaired. I didn't think I had taught him to read. I didn't think I had taught him really anything. But I thought, I'm one of those people that once the bee is in the bonnet, I can't leave any stone unturned. And so off I went to go and try to learn a little bit about this method. And almost exactly 4 years ago, it was July 1st of 2019, I started to learn about it. Came home, I learned that from a speech pathologist down in the Washington, D.C. area. I came home, I started working with him every single day, thinking I'll give this a 6-month trial, see if anything. Within 4 months, he was talking to me fluently by spelling.
Wow.
Eventually got retested. His IQ is actually 150 or above. Took the GED, passed with distinction, and is supposed to be starting SUNY Purchase in 4 months. Got accepted to their play and script writing program.
Oh my gosh.
So
25 years. 25 years, you're saying. I just want to land on that for a second. For people that think that they're we have this visual in our presentations pushing a boulder up a hill, right? 25, and you didn't stop. You didn't stop looking for a method. So of course I'm thinking to myself, did your son, when he finally was able to communicate, go, "What took you all so long?" I'd be like, "I've been in
that
here."
is a great question, Kristen. Actually, I said to him, when he first started to talk to me, I said to him one day, "How did you bear it?" Because he's been in programs for the profoundly cognitively disabled through his entire school life. Then he was in a day program for the profoundly cognitively disabled, so I could work for 4 years. I said, "How did you bear it?" And he said, and I'm quoting him, "I always believed that one day you would figure out that I am smart."
Oh,
Oh
Judy.
Blind faith. I had a very bad day because at that moment, the guilt. I know I shouldn't feel guilty. I didn't know. And he says that to me all the time, but still, there's an overwhelming guilt that I have to live with now because I did everything I thought was the right thing to do, and everything was the wrong thing. And so I don't want to say to make up for it, because there's no way I can ever make up for it, but to try to make up for it as best as I could, I completely changed my career, became a teacher of this method, opened up the Mouth to Hand Learning Center, smack in the middle of COVID in my basement, started to what I thought was going to tutor some of my friends' kids and stuff like that. And now we are, at least 50 students strong. I've got classes going on all day, every day, teaching them everything I could think of to teach them. I tease my parents and I go, that useless Ivy League English degree that you got for me, that you paid a fortune for? I'm using it. I'm so excited.
A parent's
It only
dream.
took me 30 years.
From there. So I'm teaching them, literature, how to write poetry, and that's where the book came from. I've taught them. I have a lot of students who can identify the difference between a coloratura and a dramatic soprano. Anything I could think of teaching them, I teach.
Oh.
So I created this place. It's a community now, and we are getting bigger almost by the week. And it's a haven for the non-speaking. And I try to bring in everybody from the community I can to meet them, to talk to them, to expose them to the real world, which they've been sheltered from because they were all in programs for the cognitively impaired. And flip side, to introduce them to the world so people can see who they really are. They're not what we thought they are.
I mean, so much of what you're saying, first of all, it's incredibly profound. And the idea, I can understand the mom guilt because, my story is vastly different. But when my son was involved with addiction and all that, and I knew it, but you put it in a different place, and I didn't do the right things, and I thought it, all of that. But the thing that strikes me the most about this is that we tell a story in our presentation about Apollo 13 solving a massive problem with cardboard, duct tape, and a plastic bag. And when you talk about this simple letterboard as being something that was the answer to a problem, did you ever feel at any point that the science got in the way in some ways? Because we have so much education and we have learned so much, but sometimes the answer is so simple and it's right in front of us, and we overlook it because it has to be more complicated than that in our minds. Was there ever that feeling like, why wasn't this simpler?
Yes, except for that autism is an incredibly complex thing. And I'm not a big believer in oversimplification. So in other words, when people say, well, there's an autism epidemic now and it's caused by, and fill in the blank, that's not me. I'm very scientific by nature. And if it were a simple one word answer, okay, I think we would have figured out what's happening. I do not think it's an easy thing. I do not believe that it's one thing. It's probably like a snowball rolling downhill. It's a bunch of things that are accumulating. As that happens, it makes you susceptible to the next thing happening. And then that thing causes the next thing to happen. And I feel like it's the same way with this. I think that most people who are involved in special education are pretty, good-hearted people and mean the best. Same with speech pathology, occupational therapy. I think people, for the most part, choose to go into these careers for a reason. Mm-hmm. Okay, but like me, I think that we knew what we knew. We had no good way of teaching them because it turned out that what's wrong with this particular subset. Remember, autism is just a big umbrella diagnosis. It's really a garbage can diagnosis, to be frank, because they're dumping anybody in it. And you can have, people who are speaking and going to college on this end, and you could have people who are non-speaking and considered, quote, low functioning on this end. And once they get this diagnosis, there's a prescription of how the educational path is going to happen. And the problem really is that educational methodology is self-perpetuating. And what I mean is, when a child is diagnosed with low-functioning autism, quote unquote, that means they're not speaking typically and are believed to have very low IQs. Bearing in mind, of course, all testing requires motor skills, so either speaking or manipulating things. So our children were all diagnosed as being low functioning, profoundly cognitively impaired, non-speaking, based upon a test that requires the ability to do certain things, which is their diagnosis. What they actually are is motor impaired. They're profoundly motor impaired. So they can't write, they can't manipulate blocks on a table or string beads. And now we've perpetuated that system. We keep testing them in the same way. And that proves that they're cognitively impaired. To boot, the educational methodology that is prescribed for autism is a very motor-based methodology. Pick up the card on the table, point to something, clap your hands, stand up, do things, a lot of motor planning. But that's their diagnosis. What they have is something called dyspraxia. Dys as in not working, of praxis. Praxis is volitional motor movement. If you walk into my center and you say to any of my students, including my son, smile, they will distort their face in every which way. They all smile normally as long as they're not thinking about it. But as soon as we say to them, smile, now they're thinking about it, so now they can't do it. Well, now think of any educational setting. Pick up the A. Wait a minute, I'm thinking about picking up the A, so I can't pick up the A anymore. And what happens is the more you prove that they're cognitively disabled, the more people say they need that educational methodology. And they fail to learn, and they say, you see, they're low functioning. They really need that educational methodology. And it's just this vicious cycle that they get caught in, of failure And the failure proves that they need it. And then they fail, and that proves again that they need it. And it goes on forever. And so that is what happened to all of my students. So is it simple? It is simple, Mary Fran, in that, yes, it's a card with the letter on it, but to teach them to volitionally get to the letters is not simple at all.
Right. Well,
My
and I
son
didn't
has
mean
been
to imply
reading
that it
fluently.
was. I didn't mean to imply that it was, but your explanation actually really clarifies in many ways a very complicated situation. And that
Yeah.
what you just talked about that self-perpetuating kind of diagnosis and testing, it's almost like, okay, we're going to prove continually that you can't do this, and that means that you need this. But they're then, by doing that, they're focusing on the wrong things because they're not looking maybe for what this person can do.
Yes.
Is that the other switch there that needed to be thrown? Okay,
That's
they can't
exactly
pick up
right.
the egg, so what can they do?
That's exactly right. So you've summarized it beautifully. And once you teach them to start getting to the letters volitionally, which requires sometimes years of repeated until it becomes so automated that they don't have to think about it anymore, suddenly you realize this person doesn't actually have a language disability. My son was reading since he was 2 years old. He doesn't have a cognitive disability. What he has is such a severe motor disability that he was unable to show anybody. It's a kind of like a version, if you know what I mean, of locked-in syndrome. I so want to tell you that I am in here and that I am intelligent, but now I'm thinking about showing you. So now I can't do it anymore.
Yeah. You're reminding me so much, and I want folks to think about this aspect of this, no matter what your child or family member, or if you're banging your head against the wall with our educational system. When I said that my two boys are blind, and when my Michael, they're now 23 and 19 and succeeding beyond anyone's wildest dreams. But back in kindergarten, in that individualized education plan meeting, they had the one goal that I have now blown up all over the world is this was their mentality. Michael would hang his coat up with 70% accuracy. And I said, he can walk. And I actually said to them, I said, well, now wait, I've been out, because I was a teacher. I said, I've been out of the classroom for a while. Do we have moving cubbies? Like, are they like on some kind of belt that he's got to figure out which one's moving past? They said, no, they're on the wall. They're the wooden things. So my thing with that, they said, oh, 70% for a blind kid is really good. And I said, no. Nothing is wrong with my son if he cannot get to the same cubby every day more than 70% of the time. Something is wrong with the strategies we are teaching him to get to that cubby. And when they started looking at it as their strategies versus something wrong with him, that was the switch. Now, I will say that switch took a solid year to flip, and a new principal that actually had a phenomenal background in special education, and who actually also admitted to me that they had no idea what to do for my son. I would have to do it. So I did go and find programs like you that were working and built them in our own home school. But that whole concept of you're right, our system says they're broken. It doesn't work. Even they have so many blind kids are sitting in low functioning programs because the IQ test requires there's a big facet that's visual. Well, so because they have a 0 for that, they score so low that then the education systems put them in low function. It boggles your mind.
It does.
Working within this system.
It does. And so, of course, when he was tested using a method of communication. We just didn't give them a method of communication. It would be like, Stephen Hawking sitting in a wheelchair, not giving him his computer voice and saying, wow, this guy must be cognitively disabled because he can't talk.
I know. It's wild.
The thing is, he used to talk, and so everybody knew, but my son and the children like him never talked. And I point out all the time that the word dumb actually means unable to speak. It was from deaf and dumb. It doesn't mean stupid, but it became to mean stupid because not being able to speak with your mouth came to be associated with cognitive impairment.
So I can't even imagine the parents and these students of yours who, once they achieve this, I can't even begin to imagine the experience and the emotions and everything that they feel when their child, who they have looked at as you looked at your son for so many years, because that's what they were told, how they not suddenly, but how they can then communicate. I mean, talk about a life-changing experience and moment. And, Kristen has been very vocal and very active about how the disabled, quotes, air quotes for nobody who can see this, how the disabled community has so much to offer and so many gifts. Is this something that you see as being able now to translate into that, hey, these people are employable, like in certain, areas, like they can certainly contribute? And is that maybe the next phase of this in your mind?
That's another great question. The answer I would say is yes. Okay, like somebody who may need an aide, they'll need an aide with them. But they are brilliant, and they are funny, and they are profound thinkers, and they are empathetic to a degree that you would not find in this neurotypical, I hate that word too, but population. My son would like to be a play and script writer. I have some students who would like to go into journalism, some who'd like to study history. We do have to figure out how to adapt the world to them. Okay, but yes, I absolutely believe that they have tremendous contributions that they could be making. And that's one of my dreams for my students, is to figure out how to make that their reality, how to get them through en masse high school curriculum so they can get their high school diplomas if they so choose, how to get them into college if they so choose. Rome wasn't built in a day kind of a thing. And so I can say I've been creeping forward. May 17th was my 3-year anniversary of this company that I built, starting with one student, which is now this, thriving community. We published a book of their works. We just had a gala. We were already oversubscribed to the gala to fundraise, because I also started a not-for-profit with some of the other parents in order to raise money to find ways to enrich their lives with things that are outside the scope of what my company does. So we've done a lot in the last 3 years. I can't believe how far it's come and how rapidly. And yes, I want to make their lives as rich and fulfilling as possible.
I'm thinking about all of the people that you're impacting now, and all of, I know that you said you still have this mom guilt. When my Michael, I had 3.5 years of sitting on my couch praying blindness away every single night and every single morning, furious that it was still there, right? And it was my Michael at 3.5 years old that was like, wake up, woman. We got stuff to do here. Like, he was very charming and cute. And all he said to me was, Mommy, isn't this the best day ever? And I was like, oh my God, all I wanted was to be a mom, and a really great mom. Aside from all the other goals I had in my life, that was my biggest one. Then here I was, the worst mom, not going out. I couldn't get past that, all of what I wanted for him. I had to just drop it and then go get him all the stuff that he's needed. And now I wrote a book years ago, Thriving Blind. You said Community of Thrivers. And it literally speaks to that mom that is sitting on the couch crying, unable to move forward and get their kids the tools that they need. So my question for you is what do you say to the families, the parents that are just so stuck in grief? I mean, you kept going looking for answers for 25 years. What kind of advice, or do you get to talk to parents that are stuck in grief that just can't move past that diagnosis day and look for tools?
I have many times spoken to parents that are stuck. And of course, everybody has those moments in life, every single one of us, where you're just frozen. You're frozen because maybe you're overwhelmed, you're too much to do, you're emotionally stuck. So I invented this thing when Alex was like really little, like 3 years old. I said to myself, you know what, you're human. So you're allowed to feel sorry for yourself. It's a normal human thing to feel sorry for yourself. So, but if you do it for too long, you'll get stuck. You won't be able to dig yourself out. It'll become habitual. So I invented what I called the 72-hour rule. 72 hours, I can feel sorry for myself as I want. I can blub, I can cry, I can eat ice cream, I can do whatever I need to do and feel really sorry for myself. But after 72 hours, that's it. We're done. You stand up and you move forward. And because I always abided by that rule, and I taught tons of other parents, we used to just yell at each other, 72-hour rule, you're finished now. So you have to allow people to feel what they're going to feel. Of course, we feel grief. I mean, it's not that, it's not that we all signed up to have something happen to our children. It's not that, we did something to make this situation happen. It's not our fault. It's not their fault. So you're allowed to feel really sorry for yourself, but feeling sorry for yourself is not being proactive. It doesn't accomplish anything. So that was my rule, and I've stuck by it for, now he's 29 years old. I've stuck by it for 29 years.
Wow.
It's funny. One of the things that we say in Brilliantly Resilient is you have to make the decision if you're just visiting that place of pain or if you're going to live there.
Right.
And
exactly.
And it does make the difference. It doesn't mean your problems are going to be solved, but as you said, you can live in a state of inertia, or you can try. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. You can try. And without that little tiny 3-letter word, you're stuck. You have to try. There's nothing. What other choice?
You do. I always told both of my sons now that everything in life is a choice. So you can choose to try or you can choose to not try. But then I would also point out to my younger son, before I knew that Alex was cognitively intact, I would say to my younger son, Liam, I can choose to not ask the next doctor if they can have something that can help us. But if I don't ask, I have a 0% chance of helping Alex. If I do ask, maybe I have a 0.0001% chance, but that's still better than 0. So you ask. And sure enough, over and over in his life, he's seen that through persistence, you can solve problems. It may take a week. In my case, it can take 25 years. But you can, if you keep trying, the likelihood, in my personal experience, is more often than not, you will be able to find a way to fix it.
And things change within that time. People become more aware. And, that's the other thing that Kristen and I say, we have to allow for evolution. The evolution of the world, the evolution of other thinkers, the evolution of practices and standards and tests and all of that kind of stuff. But if you stop before those things happen, you don't ever have a chance to be a part of that. So that idea of persistence is something that we really have to get into. Now, we have to wind up soon, but before we do, really quick, I want to talk about your book. I love the title, Spellbound, the Voices of the Silent.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, I realized early on that with their grasp of language, the likelihood was that they had the ability to create and in an exemplary way. Began to teach them the elements of poetry, poetic devices, things like that, which they're just like sponges. They mop it all up. And I suddenly, one day, it was almost like a dam burst. They started to create. And the work is beautiful. And it seemed a shame not to share it. And so I conceived of this idea of putting together a book. Fortunately, one of our families is good friends with Fran Hauser, who has this not-for-profit that helps people to get books published, and we call her our book angel. So she helped us put together this beautiful, brilliant, book of their work. We're already planning the sequel because the more students that start to talk, the more amazing work I accumulate. So we have our own YouTube channel now for our songwriters, and we have now there's one short story in the book, but now we're already just about done with the second short story. We will have for years now incredible material to share with the world.
Wow.
This is amazing. So where can people find all of this information and more about you?
You can look at me up on my website, which is mouthtohandlearning.com. My email is judy.chinitz, CHINITZ, @mouth2handlearning.com. 914-241-2500 if anybody wants to call the office. We also have the M2HPA, the Mouth to Hand Parent Association. So that has its own website, m2hpa.org. And we're, of course, also both of the not-for-profit and the for-profit are on Facebook and Instagram. So all the information's there. The book is available on Amazon. So again, that's where people can get it. All the profits from the book go straight to the not-for-profit.
Awesome. I'm sitting here thinking about all those years that your son was observing and not able to communicate what he was observing, but now going into the field he's going into, I'd have to think that is really going to impact all those years of observation of what he's going to be able to produce now.
I'm really thrilled to think about it. It's really exciting. I mean, he's registered for his first semester. It's I mean, I can't say it's a miracle, but it's kind of a miracle.
Oh yeah. I'm going to say miracle.
Qualifies.
It qualifies.
It qualifies.
Right.
Oh, this has been absolutely phenomenal. I'm looking forward to getting the book, and I'm looking forward to following you all on social media and staying connected, because I really do believe that this all aligned beautifully for us to all meet and get to know each other and our missions in this world. And I just, I know I just met you and whatnot, but I have to say thank you for all that persistence and perseverance and all the families that you're already impacting and that you're about to. So thank you for being one of those moms that just did not stop. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you both for having me today. Thank you both for your kind words. Again, it's a choice ultimately, right? And yeah.
It's a choice, you all. Everybody's got a choice, whether you're going to sit there or whether you're going to take one next right step. And if you need some inspiration, motivation to take that next, just one right step, go to brilliantlyresilient.net and sign up for the Brilliance Bit. It is super simple. It comes right to your email inbox once a week and keeps you motivated to take the next right step. So thank you so much, Judy. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. Join our Facebook group and follow us on YouTube to be inspired with tools to reset, rise, and reveal your brilliance.